So how long does probate take in North Carolina? One of the first questions I hear with families dealing with a loved one's estate is, how long is this going to take? And I completely understand. You're already dealing with grief and loss. Now you've got this legal process ahead of you that probably feels overwhelming. So the honest answer is it depends. But today I'm going to break down the typical timeline, what affects how long it takes, and what you can do to move things along as quickly as possible. My name is Ryan Smith. I'm a licensed real estate agent and certified probate expert here in New Hanover County, North Carolina. And I work with families going through probate every day. So let's talk about what to expect. Before we jump in, my usual reminder, I'm not an attorney and nothing I'm sharing today is legal advice. What I am giving you is educational information based on my real world experience. Here is what I strongly recommend, though, is to speak with an attorney who specializes in estate and specifically probate law. They can give you specific guidance on your situation. There are some excellent attorneys right here in our area. If you think it would help, if you'd like a recommendation, please reach out and I would be happy to connect you. So the short answer, how long does it take in North Carolina? The minimum time is usually around 6 to 9 months, but realistically, most probate cases take anywhere from 9 months to a year, sometimes longer. Now, I know that may seem like a long time, but I'm going to explain what happens, why it takes that long, and what is happening during that process. So first, there's something important to understand. North Carolina actually requires certain waiting periods. And these aren't just bureaucratic delays, they're built into the process for a good reason that we'll cover. This first built-in period is what's called the creditor claim period. When someone passes away, creditors have to be given time to make claims against the estate for money that's owed to them. So North Carolina requires that creditors be notified, and then they have at least 90 days to file any claims. But this protects both the creditors and the beneficiaries, because you don't want to distribute all the assets to the heirs and then only to find out later that there were legitimate debts that should and still need to get paid. There's a publication requirement. The executor of the estate also has to publish notice in the local newspaper letting unknown creditors know about the death. So this gives anyone who might have a claim a chance to come forward. That publication runs for a certain period, depends on where you are, and then there's a waiting period after that as well. So if you combine those right there, you've got at least 3 to 4 months just in the required waiting periods. And that's before you've even started distributing assets or closing the estate. So let me walk you through what a typical probate process looks like from start to finish. Getting started in month 1, the first few weeks are about gathering documents and getting appointed. You need to locate the will, gather death certificates, identify all the assets, and then file the initial paperwork with the clerk of the Superior Court here in North Carolina or New Hanover County. Once you file, you'll be officially appointed as the executor or the administrator. This usually takes a couple of weeks, sometimes up to a month, depending on how quickly you can gather everything. Next, usually in months 2 through 4, there's the notification and waiting period that we just discussed. So now you're in this notification phase. You're sending notices to all the beneficiaries named in the will. You're notifying creditors. You're publishing the required notice in the newspaper. And then you're waiting. So this is where those legal waiting periods come in. Even if everything is simple and straightforward, you've still got to wait for those creditor claim periods to expire before you can move forward. Next, in months usually around 4 through 8, there's the asset management and debts. So during this time, you're actively managing the estate. You might be maintaining a house that's been left behind or collecting rent if it's a rented property, managing investments. You're paying ongoing expenses like utilities and insurance. You're reviewing any creditor claims that come in and deciding if they're valid. If there's real estate that needs to be sold, you're working with an agent typically and listing that, marketing it, working through that sale process. And here's the thing about real estate. In a normal market, it can take 60 days or 90 days or more to sell a property. So that's additional time that you need to factor into the whole process. Then in months 8 through 12, there's the final accounting and distribution. All the debts are paid and all the assets are either sold or ready to distribute. You're preparing the final accounting, which is a detailed report showing everything that came into the estate, everything that went out of the estate, and what's left to distribute. You file that with the court. All the beneficiaries review it, and assuming there are no objections, you get approval to make the final distributions, meaning that you'll distribute the assets to the heirs. And then you file your closing documents with the court. So all in all, you're looking somewhere between 9 months to a year for a straightforward estate here in North Carolina. Of course, I always get the question, what could come up or that could make it take longer? So some estates do take longer than that typical timeline. I'll show you a couple of things that occur that typically slow down the process. The first one is complex assets. So if the estate includes a business or complicated investments or multiple properties or property in multiple estates, that always adds time. Each of those requires work and additional paperwork and legal processes. If there are real estate issues, if the house that's in the estate needs significant repairs before it can be sold, or if the real estate market is particularly slow, that can add months to the process. I've seen properties sit on the market, 6 months or more, depending on the situation. And then there's family disputes, and this is unfortunately, one of the biggest things that slows down probate. If family members are in disagreement about the will, or who should be the executor, or who gets what property, that can drag things out literally for years. I've seen families end up in litigation that takes 2, 3, or more years to resolve. Next could be estate tax complications. This usually happens if the estate is large enough to owe federal or state taxes. There's additional paperwork and waiting involved. You might need to file estate tax returns and get appraisals and wait for tax clearances. Next, another common one is missing or incomplete documents. So if a will can't be found, or if there are questions about whether the will that was found is valid, that creates delays. Or if you can't locate all of the assets and you're having trouble tracking down beneficiaries, which happens, all that can add time. And then there's creditor claims and disputes. So creditors will file claims, and there are sometimes disputes about whether those debts they're wanting to cover are valid. So you might need to have hearings or negotiations to resolve all that. The next question obviously is what can make it go faster? So the good news is that there are things you can do to keep the process moving as efficiently as possible. And number one, without question, is to be as organized as possible from day one. The more organized you are in the very beginning, I promise the smoother the whole process goes. So gather everything important, all the documents right away. Make lists of all the assets and debts, and then make sure you keep detailed records of everything you do. Next is communicate clearly with everyone. Keep the beneficiaries informed of what's happening. Return phone calls and emails promptly from them or your attorney. Make sure everyone understands what's going on, and the less likely you'll be to run into disputes or delays down the road. Next thing you can do is hire professionals when you need them. So that means getting an attorney who specializes in probate to help you through all the legal requirements. If there's real estate to sell, work with an agent who understands probate properties. If there are finances that are complex, definitely consider hiring an accountant, because trying to save money by doing everything yourself is certainly an option, but it can end up costing you more money in the long run. And then lastly, stay on top of deadlines. There are specific deadlines throughout the entire probate process. And missing a deadline can set you back weeks or months. So from the very beginning, just make sure you mark everything on your calendar and set reminders. And then if anything does come up, or you think anything might come up, deal with that right away. Don't wait for what seems to be a small problem now to turn into something much bigger. If there is real estate involved, keep it maintained. So especially if you're planning on selling it, don't just let it sit there empty and deteriorate. I see that all the time. You know, keep the lawn mowed, utilities on, keep the insurance in force, keep the property secured, and that way when it is time to sell it, it'll just be a much easier process and sale. So I've mentioned before there are some small estate shortcuts. So if your estate qualifies as a small estate, you might be able to use the simplified process. That is much faster. In North Carolina, the personal property, if it's valued at $20,000 or less, or $30,000 or less with a surviving spouse, you can file a simple affidavit. So that process can be completed in just a few weeks instead of several months. I covered all that in detail in another video, so please check that out or contact me directly if you'd like more information on that. There are some special circumstances, so I just want to touch on a couple of those that are the most common ones. First is if there's no will. So when someone passes without a will, it's called dying intestate. The process is similar, but it can take a little longer because the court has to determine who the heirs are according to state law versus a will, because there isn't one. So usually there's a little more paperwork involved in the appointment process. Next, if there is a will but it's being contested. So if someone is in the family usually is challenging the validity of the will, or if the entire probate process basically has to stop until that is resolved. And that people contesting that can take several months to several years depending on the complexity. Also, if there are disputes about the executor. So sometimes families might be in disagreement about who should serve as the executor. And those disputes have to be resolved before probate really can move forward at all. So to summarize, the most straightforward probate cases in North Carolina take 9 to 12 months. And that's usually the minimum. Absolute minimum maybe 6 months because of the required waiting periods. Complex estates or those involving disputes can take much longer. I've seen that last many years. But if you qualify for the small estate process, you can be done in a few weeks. So definitely look into that. My best advice is to be patient, be proactive, understand that those waiting periods are just part of the process. Keep moving forward with the tasks that you can control, and then reach out or work with professionals that can help you navigate the process efficiently and do it right the first time. So if you're in the middle of probate right now or getting ready to get started, you're maybe already feeling overwhelmed, just know it's a process. You know, take it one step at a time. If you need help, especially if there's real estate involved, that's what I'm here for. Feel free to reach out. So I hope this gave you a realistic picture of the probate timeline. If you found it helpful, please subscribe to the channel. I've got more videos covering all aspects of probate in North Carolina. I appreciate you watching, and I will see you on the next video.